Tell me about Bane! Why does he wear the mask?
Perhaps he's wondering why somebody would shoot a man before throwing him out of a pool.
What are you?
I'm Gotham's reckoning.
If I pull that off, will you die?
It'll be extremely painful.
You're a big guy.
For you.
I'm flying, Bane! I'm flying!
That's what they always say.
You made a serious mistake.
Not as serious as yours. Let's not stand on ceremony here, Mr. Wayne. You let the truth about to spare. Victor has defeated you.
You can... Where is the trailer? Where is it? Where is the trailer? Where is it?
Mr. Wayne,
You've pulled my mask off. And you have my permission to die. You wouldn't do this to me. I've been like a father to you. I had a father. His name was Ben Parker.
Spider-Man does whatever a spider can.
Oh, sorry, wrong movie. My father was... Who was he? Who was my father? Oh well. Hello everyone, and welcome to my third and final review for Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight Trilogy. My review of The Dark Knight Rises. Now, yes, so the third chapter of this unbelievably epic trilogy. So basically, by the way, there's a bit of a change of plan I should mention now, because unfortunately Parachute Walker is busy. To be honest, I've kind of expected that. I mean, I probably shouldn't have asked him to do it, because I should have asked him if he was busy, but oh well, you know. Just there's things that we can't help. I mean, or he doesn't want to do it. I don't know. There's many reasons, but yeah, no. So Jack McCullough is going to be popping in to give a segment for The Dark Knight Rises. I hope. I mean, if he isn't, then because I've just messaged him just now. So if he replies saying he will, then you know, fingers crossed. Well, you'd know if I put in the description. But anyway, yeah, let's press on. So The Dark Knight Rises continues 8 years after the events of The Dark Knight. So Gotham is basically kind of just slowly getting out of the shitty damnation that it was thrown into in The Dark Knight. And, you know, 8 years on, you know, Gotham has kind of been built on a lie. Because the truth about Harvey Dent hasn't yet come out, because Jim Gordon knows the truth, obviously because Harvey Dent tried to kill his son. Jim Gordon's got a note declaring the truth, and he's got to hold this on his shoulders. He's got to carry the burden, whereas Batman, he's been exiled. He's exiled himself for 8 years, and Bruce Wayne very much the same. I wonder why nobody questions that. Oh, because Batman goes away, what happens to Bruce Wayne? No one questioned that, but oh well. So yeah, Bruce Wayne, Batman, he's recovering from his injuries still, you know, from, you know, the Dark Knight, which, you know, he had at the end. So he's basically a cripple. he's walking around, you know, and he's not seeing the outside world anymore because he doesn't believe there's anything out there for him. And then this warlord comes in called Bane, and then he sort of has to force himself to get out there. He has to pretty much rebuild himself up to where he was, you know, before, and then take down Bane. And then, you know, it's more of the physical journey that he has to undergo. Like, he has to undergo a physical change that will allow him to defeat Bane. Who's planning to basically blow up Gotham, I guess. Blow it up and just rule Gotham, you know, free the corrupt and stuff, you know. Yeah, he's a warlord, so that's pretty much what it is. Yeah, The Dark Knight Rises is a war film. Okay, I'm going to say this before I carry on. What I admire most about this, The Dark Knight Rises, is that it does feel like it belongs in the trilogy. It doesn't feel separate. All the movies interweave, like all three of them, and this movie much the same, because this film does continue after the Dark Knight. Obviously, given, you know, they're still talking about Harvey Dent. You know, that's still, you know, 8 years on. That's still in motion. That's not. They haven't forgotten about that. But also, given some of the twists in the film, that continues after Batman Begins, as well. So, you know, all these movies interconnect, and, you know, it's one big story that all comes together in The Dark Knight Rises. I have to say, there is a significant amount of build-up at the beginning. The first 40 minutes are a build-up to, like, first 45 minutes are, you know, building up to when we see Batman again, because Bruce Wayne is trying to pick himself up, pick up the pieces, and, you know, he's still very grief-stricken over Rachel, because Rachel died in the previous film, so he's still trying to get over that. And this movie, Alfred has much more of a pivotal role in the sense that he is the emotional core of the film, because he is essentially sees Bruce as like his own child. I mean, because he raised Bruce pretty much most of his life, because Bruce's parents died when Bruce was about 10 or something. And Alfred has stood by him all this time, and, you know, over the years, and, you know, he's been there to guide him and lead him. But this time, this is when Alfred says, enough is enough. Bruce Wayne decides to go out there, half crippled, he has a knee brace that will somehow, you know, get him back on form, which obviously doesn't happen very well. Yeah, and, you know, Alfred is worried for his safety, and eventually, like, I think it's about an hour into the film, there is a point when Alfred does say to him, you know, enough is enough, like, roughly something like that, like, enough is enough, you know, and if leaving is all I have to make you understand, you know, he doesn't want Bruce to get hurt, but he knows he can't stop him from going out there, so just decides to leave. And it's quite an emotional moment, actually. And, you know, he mentions about the letter that Rachel gave him in The Dark Knight, which Alfred burnt, you know, and Bruce was like, how dare you, you know. It's a shame, because they don't end on good terms, because obviously Alfred assumes that, you know, Bruce is dead towards the end anyway. But yeah, no, there's some great emotional scenes with Alfred. Like, towards the beginning, there's a scene when, you know, he's like, you know, you hung up your cape, but you never moved on, you know. You never moved on, you didn't settle down, you know. Then Bruce is like, well, I did find someone. Yeah, I know, but you lost her, but that's part of living, you know. He's trying to get him back out into the real world, and you see the struggle for Bruce Wayne. He's just like, he doesn't want to go out there because you know, there's too much pain out there in Gotham. Like, he's lost Rachel, and, you know, he knows, you know, he's Batman, and he doesn't want to have to, you know, it's really well thought out, this plot. Sorry if I'm not explaining it well. I'm trying my best. But yeah, no, it's great to see Alfred get more of a pivotal role. That being said, Alfred doesn't really appear that much, but at the same time, you know, there's not much you could do with Alfred, really. But I really like Alfred's role in The Dark Knight Rises. It really does bring the emotion of the movie out. I'm gonna say this: when I first went to see this in the cinema, I I had seen the first two, but I wasn't like as attached to this series as I am now. Like, and I was completely surprised. The opening sequence really threw me right in there. Like the plane crash, that was really well done. And yeah, obviously the beginning bit with Bane and CIA guys caused a lot of shipping and controversy, so to speak. If there are any female members watching this video, then yeah, I'm talking about you guys. Yeah. But yeah, no. And then we're introduced to Tom Hardy as Bane. Tom Hardy is a beast. He really is. He's a beast. He's very good. I think he's very good. Of course, he's not a patch on Heath Ledger. I mean, he wasn't trying to be. He was just trying to be a good villain. He wasn't trying to top the Joker. I mean, because he knew Christopher Nolan is wise enough not to compete like that. He's going to make Bane a decent villain. He's going to make Bane a good villain, but he's not going to top the Joker. Bane ultimately offers more of a physical challenge, more than, you know, a mental challenge. That was the Joker's thing. Whereas the Scarecrow and Ra's al Ghul, they offered visual challenges, like when Batman becomes a ninja in the first one, and then when the Scarecrow, you know, puts his hallucinogenic toxin on Batman. So yeah, Batman has, each villain presents different. Each of the villains present a different challenge for Batman, and Bane is the physical challenge. Because you know when Batman and Bane have their first proper fight, it's very brutal, and you know I mean the fight was really good. It was done really well. Like, but you see the physicalness, and you're like, Alfred was right. There's no way you can take this guy down, given the fact that you've just recovered from injuries 8 years ago. It's not going to work out for you, man. It's and then, you know, well, there's this whole other stuff before that about the whole Wayne Enterprises shares thing, like who's running the company and who's taking hold of the fusion project, which you would think might be quite boring, but actually it's quite interesting, because you're like, okay, so where are all the characters now 8 years on? What's happening with the company? You're actually interested in what's going on, because it's been 8 years since the last film. So you're interested to see how much different things are from The Dark Knight to The Dark Knight Rises. It's really interesting, actually. And I mean, sadly, there's not as much Lucius Fox in this film, but still, when he's there, he's good. There is a new character in here called Miranda Tate. She's pretty good. It's interesting when we find out she's Talia al Ghul. The twists were pretty good. Like the twist with, I really liked it. Like when Bruce Wayne was in the pit, like after Bane broke his back, when Bruce Wayne had to sort of build himself back up, rise from the pit. The whole, when the guy explained about what happened with the mercenary and the child, and then it's interesting because that's when it links into Batman Begins, because it all revolves around Ra's al Ghul. You know, he's the father of Talia al Ghul. You know, who is Miranda Tate, who she's basically out for revenge, basically, and to finish her father's work. She's a double agent. She's working with Bane. Bane was excommunicated from the League of Shadows purely because he fell in love with Talia. That's pretty much what it was, I guess. Yeah, no, like those flashbacks are great. I mean, it's really interesting. Like, also there's a what was I going to say? Oh, damn it! I've forgotten what I was going to say. Oh shit! I hate when this happens. And those scenes in the pit, I really like. They are. I mean, I know, like, essentially we don't get very much of Batman in this film. It's more Bruce Wayne's journey, but at the same time, that's really good because it is called The Dark Knight Rises. It's like he's not completely Batman. He does appear as Batman earlier on, but it doesn't mean he is completely Batman. He's completely Batman towards the end, and then when he does the heroic thing of, you know, sacrificing himself for the people of Gotham, amending everything. There is a lot of action in this film, which is great. I mean, there kind of has to be, because the movie's 2 hours 45 minutes long. It's really long, but at no point do you feel that, you know, you want to stop watching it. I mean, I probably will say it is a tad bit too long. I mean, you could have lost a couple of scenes, but I think for the most part, it's paced really well. all the new characters were fine. John Daggett, the character was a prick, but I mean the actor was good in the role. Like when Bane, like you understand, like when shit gets real, when Bane comes in to Gotham, like after Bruce Wayne's in the pit, that is Bane's perfect chance to basically come in and terrorize Gotham. And then there's speech that Bane gives at the Black Gates, when he's like Harvey Dent, and he reads Jim Gordon's letter. I don't know how he. Oh yeah, I now remember how he got it. But yeah, no, it's and it's great. It's just a great, like, there's some great cinematic moments, like the football field getting blown up. That's great. I mean, most of this is not CGI. That's what I love about it. I mean, there is more CGI in this film, I'd say, than the other two, purely because of the Bat, as in the Batwing or whatever you call it. It's just called the Bat. And when certain shots of Gotham, and when Bane blows up the field, like you see some some wide range shots of that, and when the bridge blows as well. That's excuse me. That's quite. This movie is epic, and it goes in directions that you will not expect. I mean, I for one did not expect the twists. I did not expect like Alfred to have such an emotional core of the film. I did not expect it to tie into the first two movies so well. Like, the story does feel complete with all three movies. Like, if you watch back to back Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and then The Dark Knight Rises, which I've done for the reviews to reevaluate my opinions, it's brilliant. That's why I've put in the title sequence of these reviews. Welcome to Mr. Tyler Sullivan's review of The Dark Knight trilogy, and then Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3, and then the title of the film. Because I see this as one piece of film. It is one journey of one character. Yes, the tone of each of them is different, because if you think about it, Batman Begins, the origin story, fair enough. Dark Knight, the crime thriller, and Dark Knight Rises is the war film. So the tone of each of them is quite different, but they are the same story continued on, essentially. But no, it's brilliant. I mean, I've heard people give The Dark Knight Rises shit, like, oh, too many plot holes, blah blah blah. The only plot hole I could think of that was unresolved was the Scarecrow, like, because the Scarecrow cameos as the judge in this, and like, he just they don't deal with him. He just appears and then he doesn't turn up again. I thought they could have at least killed him or something, like. Well, that was a minor gripe, but this is the only thing that I felt was really wrong with The Dark Knight Rises. I mean, I do. Excuse me. I do really like this film. I mean, that's a guy at my college who hates the movie. He addressed that to me. I mean, there are moments which they could have cut. It is a little bit too long. I mean, it's like 2 hours 45. That's stretching it a little bit, but yeah, I really liked it. Like, watching it yesterday, it's really good. The cast are fantastic. Gary Oldman continues to be great as Jim Gordon, though Jim Gordon didn't really get much to do because he was sat in the hospital for most of the time. But he's good in the scenes he's in, and that moment at the end when he goes up to Batman, and he says, "I never cared who you are," and he's like, "You won't have to." And it was like, and he's like, "Shouldn't the people know who saved them?" And then the moment where Batman says, "No hero can be anybody, even someone doing something as simple, reassuring, as putting a coat around a child in another world hadn't ended." And then the music kicks in, and you think, wait, who's that one kid that I ever did that to? Bruce Wayne. It's Bruce Wayne. He must have had an inkling earlier on, but still, it's a nice, powerful moment, because then they do a flashback to Batman Begins. I really liked that. I thought it brought a lot more of an emotional round-off to the movie. It's like, at least Jimmy Gordon actually questions who he is. It's like, who are you? I need to know who you are. Like, shouldn't people know who saved Gotham? It's Bruce Wayne. Yeah, and the moment at the end when they sort of think Bruce is dead, it's quite good. The music kicks in and it's absolutely epic and brilliant. The track is called Rise, and it's superb. Hans Zimmer's soundtrack is superb. I don't know why James Newton Howard didn't come back for The Dark Knight Rises, but I don't know, but Hans Zimmer is terrific. I mean, he's a boss in any soundtrack that he does, but the Dark Knight Rises music is awesome. I love the Bane themes, like the dash dash bassa bassa. Excuse me. But yeah, no, it's a really, really good film. It, you know, considering that it's the third in the trilogy, is it the worst? I don't know. I think it's on par with both of the movies. I think the best of the trilogy is The Dark Knight, but I don't know which one's the worst. I think this is definitely on the same level as Batman Begins. Like, I love the action. If I had to make one other criticism, it would only have to be Bane's death was a little bit anticlimactic. It was just like, you know, he was about to come out and then, oh, Catwoman. Catwoman just shoots him. Speaking of which, I haven't mentioned that. Catwoman. Of course, Anne Hathaway's Catwoman. I think she's terrific. I think she's great. She's relevant, you know, she's sexy, she's sassy, she's... You know, her character was done really well. It was like, she wasn't really the most loyal character, but in the end, she kind of fell for Bruce Wayne, Batman, because he decided he wanted to settle down with her. So yeah, she sort of saw something in him. She felt worried for him because when she witnessed Bane break his back, yeah, no, she was good, and she kicked ass as well in the action scenes that she got to do anything in, which was good. So yeah, in the end, you know, The Dark Knight Rises is an utterly stellar film. It's really good. I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to call it a masterpiece, but it is very good. There are masterful directions taken, and considering that it is the third in a trilogy, one of the best third parts to a trilogy I've ever seen. Like, on par with like Return of the King, Toy Story 3, and that's at the moment that's all I can think of. Oh, and Return of the Jedi, which is also very good. Trying to think of what else. I think that's about it, really. Yeah, The Dark Knight Rises. Wow. You know what? Wow. Like, there are some great moments here. Like, even the whole stuff about the Wayne Enterprises, you know, that doesn't interest me. That does interest me, actually, because of, given the fact that it's 8 years on after the previous film. Also, the ending is very nice and emotional. It's a nice emotional wrap-up. Speaking of which, I forgot to mention Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Blake, or Robin. He's very good. He's a relevant character. He does his job. He's very determined to get the job done and find out what's going on with, you know, Bane and everything. You know, it's nice to see his character develop, and some of the scenes he has with Bruce Wayne are quite touching. You know. And yeah, you sort of realize by the end, when you find out in the end that his name is Robin, you're like, oh, fair enough. It makes the ending a bit more emotional, like gives the ending a bit more resonance as well, because he's had scenes with Bruce Wayne and that he's sort of got to know him and stuff. So Bruce Wayne decides to leave everything to him. So essentially, he's letting, you know, he's closing the doors and he's letting someone else, you know, come in. It's like the end of an era for him, and the start of something old, rid of something old, start of something new, because he decides to settle down with Catwoman. And that ending scene with Alfred like nods to him, and he's like, yeah. So like he's all right. Everything gets resolved, apart from a couple of things with the Scarecrow, and Bane's death was a bit anticlimactic. But oh well. What a brilliant film. I mean, I guess another real issue is that, you know, when we find out that Miranda Tate is Talia al Ghul, we don't really get to see her for that much longer. Because she dies at the end. But I like the way the film is structured. It's paced well. Like, you care about the characters, which is great. You care about Bruce Wayne. You care about Alfred. You care about Catwoman to a certain degree. Not so much Bane, but, you know, well, he's the villain. Like, people complained when the IMAX prologue came out, which was the first scene of the film. People complain that Bane's dialogue was hard to understand, but I thought it was fine. There were moments when, there were a couple of lines you could have, brushed up on, but I thought for the most part I could understand him perfectly. I mean, I didn't see the movie in IMAX, but I thought it was perfect. I mean, the thing is, with the Blu-rays, the aspect ratio changes a lot because of the fact that it's because of the fact that some of the scenes were shot in IMAX. So but no, it's great. The Dark Knight Rises is fantastic. One of the best conclusions to a trilogy I've seen. Some people hate this. I know I'm going to get kind of a lot of hatred for this review from certain people that I know, but I don't care. I think this is great. Yeah, and I'm happy that I don't understand why people think this is crap. I mean, have they seen the Joel Schumacher films? I mean, if you want the definitive Batman cinematic experience, these movies are it. Like, all three of them. Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. It's one film in 3 parts, essentially. And it's such a great cinematic journey. Like, the best superhero trilogy ever made. The best superhero series ever made. And, I'm going to give this 10 out of 10. Yeah, they're all 10 out of 10 movies. Just stunning. Like, seriously. It doesn't get much better than this. I mean, Batman vs Superman, I'm really worried about that. I may do a video about that, given my thoughts. I might re-review Man of Steel as well, if I get the chance. Don't think I'll get anyone to do a segment for me, unless they really want to. I could ask Mr. Ultimate Whovian, if he's up for it. But yeah, The Dark Knight Rises. What a fantastic film. Christopher Nolan's directing is pretty good. I don't think it's as polished as The Dark Knight's direction, but I definitely think that there is a lot of work gone into this. You can tell the script is written well, the acting is great, all the characters are fine, the action is superb. The scope and spectacle of The Dark Knight Rises is just stellar. It's brilliant. Like, when I saw this at the cinema, I thought, this is such a big film. The scope of this is amazing, the spectacle, and all the effects are mostly practical. It's not like, he doesn't overuse the CGI. He balances it out, Nolan does, which is great, I wish people should take inspiration from these movies, don't overuse CGI, unless there's a very good reason. Like Avatar, fair enough, understood that, but that was great CGI. The CGI which this does have is brilliant. Yeah, so yeah, I love the Dark Knight trilogy. Probably one of the best trilogies ever made. Definitely the best superhero trilogy. Oh blimey, 27 minutes. Sorry about that, but I think I needed to convey everything I had to say through 27 minutes. Before I hand you over to Jack McCullough, at long last, I will just say this. The opening... Well, no, not the opening. The first time we see Batman in this film, it's great. It's very impactful, because, I mean, they play the theme, the dun, 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 and it builds up to when we see Batman, because this is 45 minutes into The Dark Knight Rises, and the film's moved along. A couple of slow moments, but, we've got through it, and, we finally get to see this big action moment, and there's a lot of impact when he comes back, rather than if he just came back, like, say, 20 minutes in, or 15 minutes in. I think having him come back 45 minutes in is quite good, actually, because we spend time with him and Alfred, like, discussing, like, what are you going to do? You can't just sit here, you got to go out there, but don't, you got to go out to the real world, and then it's brilliant. It goes on from there. Wow. Yeah, sorry about that. I needed to convey everything I wanted to. So, before I go, I'm going to hand you over to Jack McCullough, who has given me a short segment about The Dark Knight Rises. So, go on, Jack.
Hello everyone, Jack McCullough here again for Mr. Taurus 11's channel, filling in for Harry Parachute Walker, who for various reasons won't be able to do his clip. Yeah, so I'm here to talk about The Dark Knight Rises, the third and last film in the Nolan trilogy of Batman. Yeah, so The Dark Knight Rises, for many people, this is probably the weakest Batman film in the Nolan trilogy. And for me, I have to disagree. I mean, I have never really been the biggest fan of the Nolan trilogy. My first exposure to Batman was the Batman animated series with Kevin Conroy as Batman and Mark Hamill as the Joker. I loved that series. And the first Batman film I saw was Batman Returns with Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman and Michael Keaton as Batman. So, yeah, so I didn't really grow up with the Nolan trilogy. The Nolan trilogy I didn't see till much later. In fact, The Dark Knight, when it came out, I didn't even see that film until a couple of years later, in 2010 or 11. So yeah, I was never the biggest fan of the Nolan trilogy, and sort of didn't ring any bells for me. I just didn't. I mean, I could understand why people like it. Sort of brings Batman into the real world, but I was just never the biggest fan. Yeah, and Batman Begins, I was never really a big fan of that film either. Christian Bale, I thought, though, as Bruce Wayne was brilliant. I really liked him as Batman, the first film. He brought a really good performance, really good as Bruce Wayne, you know, this playboy, you know, he plays the stupid playboy, you know, you just don't think he's Batman. And he's just really good in the role as Bruce Wayne, I thought. A lot better than Michael Keaton, who's just a bit awkward, socially awkward for some reason. And yeah, but I thought he played Bruce Wayne excellent, Christian Bale. And yeah, I mean, Batman, I thought he was great in the first Batman film, you know, where he crashes onto the car and he's like, "I'm Batman," you know, great. I just, you know, Batman Begins, I think he's got the voice perfect, you know. Yeah, I mean, Batman Begins, my problem with it is, you know, the whole Bruce Wayne becoming a ninja kind of thing, just a bit, you know, cliche for my tastes. It's just a bit, I don't know, just a bit cheesy, I think. I mean, it's like Batman meets the Karate Kid, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that whole him becoming a ninja. It's just like in every action movie, or in every, you know, oh, you must become great warrior before you master your own skills. You must learn the art of kung fu. You know, it's just really cliche, and I just didn't like that. I mean, I like the story that Batman trains himself. You know, he trains his own body, he trains his own mind, and I just didn't like that whole becoming a ninja thing. Yeah, so Batman Begins I wasn't a big fan of. And then, of course, we had The Dark Knight. Now, The Dark Knight, what a good film. I mean, Heath Ledger's the Joker. I mean, everybody says it, but, you know, he is the definitive on-screen performance of the Joker in voice and in character. I mean, he's just so disturbing and just so grotesque as the Joker, and he really makes the Joker one of the great works of fiction. I have to really respect Heath Ledger for that. It's unfortunate that he died, you know, shortly before this film came out he died, but, you know, he was really, you know, just great as a Joker. Not as good for me as Mark Hamill. I mean, Mark Hamill will always be my favourite Joker. Well, definitely he is the voice of Joker, the laugh, the whole voice. But Heath Ledger was just brilliant. I mean, the pencil scene, you know, do you want to know how I got these scars? You know, brilliant. He even surpassed Jack Nicholson in the Batman '89 film, and Jack Nicholson is an incredible actor. You know, he's won Oscars. He's been in One That Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He's been in Chinatown. He's been in The Shining as Johnny in The Shining. You know, he's been in so many films, and he's such a great actor. And when he played the Joker, nobody thought that he could be surpassed, and he was by Heath Ledger. And Heath Ledger, he's not the classic Joker, but he's a more realistic, more scary, more, real world Joker, and he's just so disturbing. And a lot of scenes he improvised himself. The bit where he's coming out of the hospital and he's hitting the button, and the scene where he's clapping where the others are clapping, and just a great film, The Dark Knight. And Christian Bale, gives another solid performance. I think his performance as Batman goes down just slightly, but if you find out what happened, he gets that, I'm Batman, Joker, where's Rachel, all that. I mean, it's just not as good as the first film, and I don't blame Christian Bale at all. I mean, it's not his fault. If you apparently during the filming of that film, Christopher Nolan or somebody on set told him to distinguish from Batman and Bruce Wayne, you gotta put on a voice, and that's where the Beast voice, the fruit cancer voice came from. And it's understandable. I mean, I don't blame Christian Bale. He's still incredible as Batman, not as good for me as maybe Michael Keaton. I mean, if he had stayed with the voice he had in Batman Begins, I think he would have been, my favourite Batman. But unfortunately, the producer suggested he did that, and he kept that. So, yeah. But The Dark Knight, really good film. I really love that film. And then The Dark Knight Rises, that came out in 2012, the last Batman film of the Nolan trilogy. It was the first one I saw in the cinema. I really like this film. Christian Bale, really good as Batman again, like I said. And we also have, I'm trying to remember, Anne Hathaway as Catwoman. Now, I think, to be honest, what they did with Catwoman in this film wasn't great. I didn't really like the direction they did with Catwoman. I was really expecting her to, have the cat motif, but there was none of that. The only thing that suggested that she was a cat were her goggles, and I just didn't like that. There was no personality with her as Catwoman. I really thought Anne Hathaway was weak as Catwoman. She was good as Selena Kyle, at the start where she kicks over his cane. He's like, I only know one person with those pearls, and that's my mother. And he just kicks over the cane, and she jumps out the window. I mean, I thought she was really good as Selena Kyle. I thought she was better than Michelle Pfeiffer as Selena Kyle, but as Catwoman, she was just bland. There was nothing really about her that I liked, and she just didn't engage me. And so I thought she was weak. Definitely not as good as Michelle Pfeiffer. Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns is excellent. I grew up with that film. That was the first film I saw. It's not because of nostalgia purposes I think she's better. I just think she gives a better all-round performance as Catwoman. I thought that Anne Hathaway was, not good as Catwoman. But anyway, the whole story is Batman. It's been 7 or 8 years since since Dark Knight. Bruce Wayne got his leg injured. He's crippled. He's been away for a long time. Batman's been away. People think that Batman's dead. Remember at the end of the Dark Knight when he said, I'll take the blame for Two-Face, and Batman, the bat signal is destroyed. Batman's set after. And it's been, nearly 10 years since the last Batman film, and, Christian Bale, Batman, is just not in good shape. He's not doing well at all, and, so then Bane, the new villain, arrives in town. And what's weird about Bane, is he's English. Now, if you watch the animated series and read the original cartoons, he was Mexican. And, he's been in Batman films before. He was in Batman and Robin, but we don't talk about that. This new take on Bane, I kind of like, but I kind of don't like. I mean, think the actor playing Bane is really good. Just, I don't like the fact that Bane is English, and I sort of prefer the Mexican Bane from the animated series. And Bane to me just seems a bit too smart, you know. I always see Bane as just sort of a muscly type of character, you know, just someone who would meet Batman in his strength, but not necessarily the smartest. That sort of goes to the Joker. And yeah, his whole plan is sort of, you know, to destroy Gotham City, to basically blow it up, and with a nuclear bomb. And yeah, so Batman, you know, he comes out of retirement. He gets this leg thing that helps him somehow, and you know, he's back in the Batsuit. He's fighting crime. He meets Catwoman. You know, there's some good chemistry between them, and then we have Bane, you know, going into the bank, you know, robbing the bank. We have Batman chasing him on his, you know, his bat bike, and then, you know, we find out, you know, Batman, he goes in the gantry, and you know, we find out that Bane is working for the same. He's working for the same organisation that Ra's al Ghul in the first film was working for, and we find out, you know, he wants revenge, and you know, it's suggested throughout the film that he might be his son. But anyway, Bane basically kicks the crap out of Batman. Batman's lying there, and yeah, so basically he's put down his hole, and the whole story is, you know, Batman rising. You know, he's basically every bone in his body is broken, and then eventually Batman does rise. He fights Bane, but he finds out that woman he had sex with earlier in the film is actually Ra's al Ghul's daughter, and she's planning to finish his work. And basically Batman has to stop her. He goes in the, you know, the bat wing, takes a nuclear bomb, and you know, that's it. You think, you know, that's the end for Batman, and basically Bane has cut off Gotham City and all that. And yeah, but then you find out later that he is still alive. Alfred sees him, and yeah, so that's really it for The Dark Knight Rises. A lot of people say it's, you know, the worst in the series. I have to disagree. For me, Batman Begins was just boring. I liked the origin story, but you know, Scarecrow wasn't one of my favourite villains. I liked Bane even though he was English. I thought, you know, Anne Hathaway's Catwoman was not memorable at all. But, you know, as a whole, I enjoyed the film. I thought it was good. I didn't like the way they were tied in with the first film. I just like it was a separate plot. I didn't enjoy the whole, you know, we're here to finish Ra's al Ghul's work. I thought that was lazy. I didn't like that. But on the whole, I thought the film was good. I thought Christian Bale was good as Batman. You know, I don't hate Christian Bale. It's not his fault for the, you know, I'm Batman voice. But yeah, good film. If I give it a rating, probably 7 out of 10. Really good film. I like Bane. I like Christian Bale. Anne Hathaway wasn't great, but you know, it was a good end to the trilogy. But I just didn't like the way it tied in with the first film. I'd prefer it as a separate plot. So that's it for me, guys. Back to Mr. TARDIS 11.
Thank you very much, Jack. That's a very good segment. I enjoyed that when I was rewatching it. So yeah, this trilogy is utterly stellar. I mean, the whole trilogy is fantastic, and I'm glad I've reviewed them now as well. Man of Steel, I will review that at some point. I am actually going to be watching it on Friday because I might have already done that depending on when this video is up or when you watch this. Because my friend is coming over and he wants to watch it, so well, fair enough. So I might review Man of Steel. Yeah, no, these movies are just terrific. So yeah, I hope that you've enjoyed these Dark Knight trilogy reviews and sketches at the beginning. It's been a pleasure to review them, and I want to thank my subscribers, Mr. Ultimate Whovian, Labyrinth35, and of course Jack McCullough, for appearing in these videos, because it's just something a bit different, and it adds diversity to my videos. So I want to thank both of them. I want to thank both of them for doing this, because it really does mean a lot. I mean, I have to say, much like the films, my reviews have got longer each time. Like, the review of Batman Begins was like 25 minutes, Dark Knight review was like 30 minutes, and this is probably about 30 or 40 minutes, depending on how long Jack McCullough's segment actually is. I haven't actually checked the runtime, but oh well. So yeah, before this drags on any longer, I'm going to go. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and as always, oh, sorry, I got something in my eye. I'll start that again. Thank you all for watching, and as always, I'm Mr. TARDIS11. See ya. I'll clean my eye.